We're just waiting for the chairs and the sofa and the tables to get out of the stage quickly. And we have got an absolutely iconic speaker in the academic leadership, Professor David Foskett, who will be enthralling all of you with the modern education trends globally. He's one of the most passionate and the most competent educationists in Europe, and he's also the chairperson of the International Hospitality Council, been in academics for over 40 years, and a prolific speaker all over the world. Can we have all the tables be out of the stage, please? Sorry for the inconvenience. So we're going to have Professor David Foskett. Please don't go away. This would be one of the most star event of the day. And Professor Foskett will be speaking for half an hour solo on the Leaders Speak 1. So we have got 4 Leaders Speak for the day, and this is the first Leader Speak from none other than Professor David Foskett. So we have David Foskett with us now. Ladies and gentlemen, may I please request you take your seat and listen to what would be possibly a very, very extraordinary talk from an extraordinary person, Professor David Foskett, Emeritus Dean, University of West London, MBE from the British government, and Chairman, International Hospitality Council. May I just leave everything onto David's hand. Thank you very much, David.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Okay, I made some notes from the very eminent panel, very interesting morning. I've been in education a long time, over 39 years. And when I started teaching, or when I was a student first of all, you sat in a classroom and you took notes. The teacher spoke and you wrote, and you weren't allowed to ask questions. You just sat there and you listened, you wrote down what the teacher said. The teacher was the knowledge, yeah? And then when I started teaching, we had a machine called a Banda machine, you know? And that rolled off notes. And then we moved on to an overhead projector, yeah? And teachers love the overhead projector. So much so that when we were told no more overhead projectors, we've got to use PowerPoint, many teachers, they then locked them away in their cupboard, yeah? Because they resisted PowerPoint. But you can't resist technology. We have to move with technology. And I'm going to talk to you about technology. I'm also going to talk to you about skills and give you some examples from my experience of dealing with young people, students in particular, and how we deal with this new generation. And we've talked about the XY generation, we've talked about the XY, but we're now in the Z generation. The Z generation are those born after 2000. They're 21st century young people, and they are very different to when I was a student or when you were a student. If you ask me the time, I tell you the time. But if you take a student or a young person like my daughter, she never wears a watch. You ask her the time, this is the time. The smartphone tells her the time. This is a single device. It tells you the time, it might even tell you the date. But the smartphone is the link to everything that they want. And the smartphone has become an addiction. They are addicted to it. The British Psychological Society cites this as an addiction. We've heard about digital natives. We've heard about the youngsters are natives to this. We've heard about how we are all immigrants to the digital world. But I call this generation the stroke and stab generation. They stroke or they stab the phone. Yeah? An 18-month-old child, give them a book, and it's an iPad that doesn't work. Yeah? This is what we are faced with today. But there are numerous opportunities, and if we don't move with those opportunities, we're going to be in trouble. And some academics are in trouble because they can't cope with the new world. One university in England, for example, has built a whole new campus around the digital world. And many of the academics have said, not for me. They say, I will take retirement because I can't cope with this digital world. But to survive, we have to. It's not going to go away. I know there's been a lot of controversial about Facebook, Instagram, but something will replace it. We have a system now where students are in touch with the internet wherever they go. Students say to me, why do I have to learn facts? Because I just go into my internet. Why do I need to learn facts? Yeah? They bring their laptops to class. And I was given a lecture on food science, and one student said to me, you're wrong. I said, what'd you say? I've just emailed my father, and my father says you're wrong. So in the class, he emailed his father. Yeah. So I got worried. So I went, after the lecture was over, I got out my science books. I thought, I was right. So I said, where did you get your information from? He said, Wikipedia. I said, Wikipedia is not a relevant reference. But the moral of the story is that they can be one step ahead of us. They can be one step ahead. And what is teaching and learning in this digital age? And another issue we have in the UK is skills. A massive skills shortage. And it's become more of a problem with Brexit. Because we won't be able to have the people from Eastern Europe who are doing the skills. Because the British education system, of which I'm a critic, has failed in technical education. And there's lots of discussion around technical education, about skills of the future. So there's much to learn from technology, but we have to recognise that technology also has its limitations. We have to talk about emotional intelligence. What will the classroom look like in the future? We no longer need classrooms in rows. We no longer need 3-hour lectures. Because as I said, the students are one step ahead often. And many of the students, when they get their study guide, they look at the assessment and they go straight off to the library or straight onto the internet and tackle the assessment. They're assessment driven. Because what we've done in the UK, we've commodified education. We've commodified it to such a point where the students want value for money. And they want a job at the end. So employability is important. And what is education for the 21st century about? It's about employability, but no longer knowledge and theory. It's about competencies. It's also about mindset. Mindset. Giving the students the mindset and the skills to carry on learning, which we've heard in the last sessions. And that's a challenge that we have to face, giving them the right mind, the mindset, the employability. But also, how do they learn? They learn a lot, as we've said, from the internet, through technology. But that technology has got to be right. So what we've done is we've created games, learning games, videos, questions and answer sessions which they can access on their tablet or their smartphone. So much so, they are now questioning, why do we need exams? Or if we do exams, why do we have to write freehand? I go to several universities as an external examiner, and they say to me, why do we have to write freehand? And many of them can't write freehand because we ask them to word process everything. And I say to them, well, you have to write freehand because we have to try to avoid cheating. But they don't understand that. And there will come a time where all exams will be online. We live in the online generation. More and more shopping is done online. More and more appointments are booked online. We book travel online. We book hotels online. This is the generation that does everything online. And a colleague of mine the other day, her mother died. And she wanted to book a local funeral in West London. Every undertaker, except one, you booked online. So you booked your funeral online. This is the online generation. Something what I find difficult, but true. Shopping centres for the young have become entertainment grounds. They're entertainment grounds. They walk around, they look at the showroom, and then they go home and book an order online. Click and collect. That's all we see in shops in London. Click and collect. So these shopping centres have become entertainment grounds. They have to have cinemas, they have to have restaurants, they have to have ice rinks to get the people in, to get the people to look, so they go home and they click and collect, or they deliver. And everything's becoming more personalised. Shopping has become more personalised. Amazon is that you've got your personal account. They track everything. Everything that you've ever bought is tracked. And in education, what we have to do in the future is we have to have more personalised learning. We have to have personalised learning because the factory system is no good. Everybody's different. Everybody learns differently. I could never understand that actually at the age of 11, every child should be able to achieve this grade. Because every child is different. Every student is different. And personalised learning is so important. Because if we don't have personalised learning, we're missing out on a lot of talent. A hell of a lot of talent gets untapped. A lot of creativity gets untapped. A lot of innovation gets untapped. And if you read Sir Ken Robinson and his book, Out of Our Minds, and Creative Schools, we've lost generations of creativity, because the traditional schooling system knocks it out of them. We have to create a system of personalised learning and creativity. And this is important. I'll give you an example what everybody's doing. In his book, Sir Ken Robinson, as a child of 8, and the mother brings the child, and he says to him, the school can't teach her. The school can't teach her. She's too disruptive. They want her to go to a specialist school. So he interviews the child, and he says to the mother, let's go outside and leave her in the room on her own. But I will put the radio on, music. They go outside, they look through the glass panel, and the child dances. She doesn't stop dancing. And he says to the mother, that's your problem. Because in order for her to think, she has to dance. Send her to a dancing school. She sent her to a dancing school, and she became a prima ballerina. The school wanted to throw her out. She became a prima ballerina and a choreographer for Andrew Lloyd Webber musicals. Now, what does that tell you? That tells you that not every child is the same. Not every student in a university is the same. It's no good putting them in front in a classroom. Let's have different environments for students. Let's have a classroom that's got bean bags. Let's have different configurations to capture different learning styles, different ways that students learn. And I went to one university in Eastern Europe where they've done this. They've created different classrooms. One classroom, a beanbag, another one with computers in the middle, yeah, and smart boards for students to activate their learning. So what does the teacher become? The teacher becomes a facilitator of learning. Yeah? Not, if you don't do this, I'll fail you. That's not the way to teach. I will give you the skills. Yeah? I will teach you how to learn in your own way. Because we're all so different. Human beings are very different. So we have to capture the individuality of people. We heard about core skills. Now, core skills, numeracy and literacy, are important. Of course they're important. But they have to be useful. We have to have useful knowledge. A very famous sociologist of education called Bernstein, some of you may have heard of Bernstein, a sociologist of education in London. Unfortunately, he died a few years ago. And he was a great critic of the education system. And he said, why are we teaching young people complex algebra that they're never going to use? Why don't we teach them an in-depth analysis of the tax system? It's more useful. Because a lot of youngsters switch off. Yeah? And when I used to teach numeracy to some very difficult students, young students, in my very early days, the way I captured them was not writing on a board or whatever. I used to say to them, right, what football team? What's your favourite football team? What division are they in? What's the chances of them winning the Premier League? Is it 10 to 1? Is it 20 to 1? And they captured it because you are contextualizing the learning. And it's important to contextualize learning. And people have said to me, industry has said to me, they can't read a profit and loss account. They can't read a profit and loss account. And I say that's because they've never taught a profit and loss account, because the core system doesn't teach profit and loss. It teaches algebra. It teaches trigonometry. But industry want employability. And what does employability mean? It means applying the knowledge. Applied learning, that's the key one. Applied learning. And there are different types of learning. You can have learning for learning's sake. Yeah? The classical humanist system of education is about learning for learning's sake. And a lot of academics in that system say, well, actually, learning isn't about getting a job. Learning is for the love of learning. I studied history, not me personally, the academic would say, I studied history because I love history. But today, majority of young people want a job at the end of it. If they've got massive debt at the end, 56,000, 60,000, they're saying, I want a job. So it's our responsibility to give them those skills where they can get a job, but also they can continue the learning. And there will always be those people that will want to do learning for learning's sake, to develop their mind, and that's a good thing. But the vast majority of students that I've taught want a job at the end. And they are extrinsic learners. They are extrinsic learners. They're interested in the subject to get the job. Intrinsic learners, I love history, I love geography. No connection to a job. And for them, that's a good thing. But industry are saying, we want people that can do the job. We want people with competencies. We want people that can do the job in 5 years' time. But if you ask industry, what do you want? Often they don't know. They want the right attitude. They want the right aptitude. Yeah? But they don't know what the job is going to be in 5 years' time. Because technology is moving at such a pace that the senior managers don't know what the job will look like in 5 years' time. With the pace of technology, with robotics, with the way things are happening. We're living in a revolution. The information and technology revolution. It's never moved. Life has never moved at such a pace as it is today. It's running at a phenomenal pace, which many people of my age can't keep up with it. So they give up. But the youngsters can't give up. And us in education, we can't give up. We had the agricultural revolution, the industrial revolution. We have now got the information and educational revolution. We have an educational revolution. And we have to respond to that. And we have to respond to the young people. And individual learning is a way that we can respond. Let me tell you something else, where academics do find it difficult. I go to a number of universities. And I was at an exam board at a very, very good university in the UK. Very well up with digital education. And the students presented posters, which they did on the computer. Knowledge, skills, excellent. Excellent. And when I looked at the marks didn't correlate with the quality of the posters that the students had done. So when it came to the exam board, I said, I think there's a serious problem here. So they said, what do you mean? I said, because these marks are too low. Yeah? These are excellent posters that the students have done. So I said, I'm going to go around the table now of all the lecturers. And I said, tell me, how many of you could actually do anything better than what the students have done? And you know what happened? Their faces went like that. Their faces. And the chair of the exam board said to me, he was Australian. He said, good on you, mate. He said, I don't understand this British system. Up the marks by 20%. Yeah? So this is an example where the students are ahead of the academics and the teachers. Yeah? If you want to know about technology, you ask a 14-year-old. No good asking a 67-year-old, ask a 14-year-old. If I've got a problem, I ask my children. Yeah? And they say, Dad, you're so thick. Because it's instant to them. They are, as I say, natives to the whole subject. And when we talk about skills, now this is an important one. Skills and technical education is important. But the problem in Britain is the British system. Because the British system is based on classical humanist education. And skills have been left behind. Now, skills doesn't mean to say that you're unintelligent, you're not academic. Because I would challenge this word academic. What does academic mean? Because it's all learning. Yeah? You can have high level skills. We heard this morning about high level skills. It's all learning. An academic comes from Greek philosophy, from Socrates. And an academic means you belong to an academy. And what is an academy in Greek philosophy? It's a school. So you're a teacher of a school. And it's a very misleading word. But we need people with higher level skills, with higher level technical education. Because higher level skills and skills underpin economies. Yeah? They underpin the economy. The problem is Britain is in a crisis situation with skills. It has a very good classical humanist system when we talk about the premier universities, the Russell Group in Oxford, Cambridge, Durham, Imperial. But the biggest mistake that the British made was they called polytechnics universities. And they've gone down to academic drift. And they're not producing the skills that the country needs. And all this is documented. And now we're in a crisis situation. America is the same. America is exactly the same. And the report called Pathways to Prosperity by the Harvard Educational Institute, Harvard have produced this document. You can pull it off the internet. It's called Skills to Prosperity. And it highlights where they've gone wrong in America in not promoting skills. And an American researcher called Nancy Hoffman has done a research across Europe. And she cites that the best system of skills education is Switzerland. It's called schooling in the workplace, working with employers, higher level schooling in the workplace. Switzerland followed by Germany. Yeah? Britain is way down the list. America is way down the list. So at a recent meeting last week, when I was at the Institute of Apprentices, a government body, they were talking about, we've got to get nearer to the German system. So I said, but it's only taken you about 50 years, yeah? Because the trouble is with the British government, whichever colour, they meddle in education. They meddle, yeah? They don't have a real strategy. In Germany, they haven't changed their system since 1952. Every time we get a new government, they meddle, they change the system, and it creates chaos. But in Germany, they have a very consistent system. It's no mistake or no accident that the best brands are German. Volkswagen, Mercedes, Miele, yeah, they lead the world because there's equality of esteem between vocational and academic education. I do not distinguish between vocational and academic. The 21st century must bring the two together as learning. And it must bring the two together as learning for the workplace, for employability, to give people the skills that's needed for them to get a job, but also the skills that underpin the economy. Now, another thing we've got to be very careful about is this. We cannot dehumanize society. The problem we face also is with the phone, the smartphone, where we've got young people on the train, on the bus, crossing the road, across a car, I knew someone the other day nearly got knocked down. The car just missed them because they're on their phone. Yeah? I've seen drivers on their phone. The addiction. But this addiction, and it is an addiction, I was having breakfast in the club lounge this morning upstairs, supposed to be the Premier Lounge, right? The receptionist hardly looked at me. She was on her phone. And that's a real problem because we can be careful we're not dehumanizing society. Yeah? So we have to teach people how to interact. We have to teach young people how to interact. I was at the hospital the other day, the hospital with my mother-in-law. We got to reception, the cardiac. She said to me, self-check-in. Just pushed me. Didn't even look up, but the computer was there. Self-check-in. So we checked in. We sat down. And there was a very elderly gentleman, about 80. She said to him, self-check-in. So he went to the self-check-in. He was on his own. He was struggling. I said, excuse me, do you need some help? He said, oh, yes, please. And he was struggling. And he put his wrong date of birth in. So he put his wrong date of birth in because he got the numbers wrong, because he was confused. And it rejected him. Said, you don't have an appointment. And he got really worried. I said, don't worry. I took him to reception. I said, excuse me, the receptionist. I said, look up from your computer. Talk to this man, because he needs help. Yeah? And this is what I call dehumanizing society. If the computer doesn't say it, it's like when you're on the end of the phone, oh, the computer's broke down today, or the computer says this. I said, don't worry about the computer. We have to also empower people that if the computer doesn't say the right thing, or the things that people want to hear, we have to empower people. We still have to have people to interact with people. And that's the problem with the younger generation. Yeah? They don't have emotional intelligence. And we have to teach you, within this employability, we have to teach emotional intelligence, being able to work with people, react with people, yeah? Emotionally get on with people. Emotional intelligence is something that we have neglected. And we have to bring this back, emotional intelligence. If you look at the research in America, the 10 top executives of the largest companies in America have average IQ, intelligent quotient, but they have very high EQ, emotional quotient. So we have to bring this, within this technological society that we're living in, we have to bring emotional intelligence in. And in my industry, hospitality, it is essential. Essential. And I got to the point when I was teaching and running a department where I was failing. These students could produce the most wonderful documents on the computer in any format you like, and the quality was excellent, but they couldn't talk to people. They couldn't present. So I said to my colleagues, and they were very anti this at the time, I said, what we must do here, we've got to do something drastic. We can't send these people out to industry because they can't react with people enough. Some of them couldn't even walk properly. Yeah, they shuffle. Yeah? Or they lay, yeah, man. Yeah? We've got to do something drastic. So I brought in a drama teacher. I taught them theatrical skills. Yeah? And it changed completely. And I learnt this. I tell you how I learnt this. We learn by experience. Because one day in my office, I had a knock on the door. And there was a young man in his early 30s. And he said to me, I want to be a butler. So I said, well, why do you want to be a butler? He said, because I want a proper job. And I said, well, what have you been doing? What's your qualification? He said, oh, I'm a graduate from the Royal Academy of Music and Drama. So I said, well, what have you done? He said, I've just come off, this was February. I said, what have you done? He said, I've just come off the Oxford Playhouse as Prince Charming. So I said, what did you do before that? He said, I was Marius in Les Miserables at the Palace Theatre, London. So I said, what did you do before that? He said, I was Chris in Miss Saigon. So I said, well, what do you want to become a butler for? Right? He said, because I'm too old, I can't get the parts. My career is over. So I said to my colleague, I don't know what we're going to do. Let's give it a try. Let's give it a try. Yeah? Anyway, we put him at the Savoy. Yeah? And after a month, we went to go and see the head butler. And the head butler said to me, we've got a problem here. I said, what's your problem? He said, because everyone's asking for him. Everyone wants Jody. All my top clients want Jody. He said, not only can he do the technical stuff, I can give all the technical stuff to him, all the computer stuff to him, which I can't do, but the guests want him all the time. Because he says, as soon as he goes into that room, he can sit at a desk and he can do all the computer stuff. But then as soon as he goes into that room, the curtain goes up and he acts the part. And the guests love it. And this is what I mean by we can't dehumanize society. Yeah? And that is a great danger with some of the young people. They don't look at you. Yeah? Because they're addicted. Yeah? I have to say to my children when we're out at dinner, put those phones away. I don't want to see those phones. Because you see people in restaurants all the time. They're taking photographs and they're sending it on Instagram. Yeah? And they don't look, because we're losing the art of conversation as well. And that can be a real problem. So technology, yes. How we use technology. Video. We can do questions and answers. We can do all sorts of things. But at the same time, we have to be human. We have to be human. Yeah? Robots may take over lots of things, but there's lots of things that robots can't do. Right? Robots can't show emotion like a human being. And that is so, so important. So we're looking now at what we do. what do we do in the future? We have to recognise talent. We have to recognise craft. We have to recognise technology. And there's a very famous saying, and I saw this when I was in Italy, and it was a master baker who was very proud of his profession and his business. And on his wall, he had a quote. A man, I'm sorry, man, but obviously we say woman as well, but a man who works with his hands is a labourer. A man who works with his hands and his head is a craftsman. A man who works with his hands, his head and his heart is an artist. Yeah? And that quote is St. Francis of Assisi. And what we mean by that is we cannot divorce what craftspeople do with the cognitive skills that they have, yeah, and how we bring technology into this. And we cannot distinguish today in employability between the cognitive skills, yeah, the psychomotor skills, the practical skills, the applied learning, which industry wants. Theory and knowledge on its own is not enough. It's not enough. Theory and knowledge is not enough. Competency, applied learning, mindset, aptitude, yeah? And we have to have, people have to have the aptitude to do the job as well. They have to want to do the job and they have to have the aptitude. Aptitude is quite different from attitude, yeah? And for example, some people want to do certain jobs which, quite frankly, they will never be able to do because they will never be good enough. But there's other things they can do. For example, if I learnt to play the piano, I might in 6 months knock out a tune, a nursery rhyme. But I'm never going to be a concert pianist. I'm never going to be a concert pianist. Yeah? So we have to channel young people, also with the use of technology, into the right mindset of what they can do. And this comes down also to personalised learning. Personalised learning is extremely important and what people want to do. The education system in the UK, for example, is all geared towards A-levels, universities, etc., to pure academic subjects. And I've had young people come to me, for example, who have said, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm at another university. One guy said to me, I'm working in a hotel. I love it. It's what I want to do. But I'm actually at Bristol studying human anatomy. But I've dropped out. I said, well, did you fail? He said, no, I didn't fail. I was told from the school that this is what I should do after my A-level. But I don't want to do it. So I put him on a management course. He did extremely well at this management course. He came back the year after to get the job, to get the prize. He got a prize. So I said, Julian, what are you doing now? He said, oh, I'm back at Bristol. I said, finishing your degree? He said, no, I'm the hospitality manager, and I'm very happy. I didn't want to do human anatomy because all I could see at the end of the day was cutting up dead bodies. And that's another thing we have to do with young people. We have to channel them in the right job that they want to do. And that's important. I've seen so many what I call refugees who have struggled because they've been forced down a route that they don't want to do. And you will always be good at something. Whether you'll get a job at is another issue, but you'll always be good at something that you have interest in. Yeah, if you've got interest in something, you'll always be good at it in some way. And we have to channel young people, yeah? And this is what I'm saying. We need to revolutionise the education system because we're losing so much talent. I belong to a charity, and this charity is called The Clink. and it runs restaurants in prisons for the public, the general public. So the prisoners cook and serve for the general public. So when you go to the prison, you have to leave your keys, your mobile phone, you have to go through the gates, security. Yeah. It's quite an experience, yeah? Okay? Now, the first time I went, I was called up to the boardroom. And when I was in the boardroom, lovely, I said to the chief executive, oh, this is very nice furniture, all made by prisoners. First class quality furniture, all made by prisoners. I went down to the restaurant, there's beautiful paintings and etchings on the wall. He said, all done by prisoners. I couldn't do anything like it. I couldn't make the furniture. I couldn't certainly paint and do etchings like they could. And you know what? I said to myself, why has this talent been untapped? And I asked the prisoners, and they said, I failed at school. Yeah? I was told at school I wouldn't be good at anything. But I've said you've created lovely paintings. Yeah? So we have not harnessed this talent. Yeah? The education system has failed so many in the UK where it shouldn't fail. Yeah? Everybody has a talent. I'm not good at a lot of things, right? One thing I was always good at was hospitality because I loved it. Yeah? Ask me to do a painting. Ask me about a car. I wouldn't even know how to lift the bonnet, yeah? But there's so much talent and how we can use and get them engaged in some way in the modern technology to engage their enthusiasm as well. There's so much we can do in the future. And this is what I'm saying. This is where the education system, and it's not just me speaking, but it is across the world, we have to have this revolution. This educational revolution, yeah? And if you want to read a good book by Sir Ken Robinson called Creative Schools, and his work Out of Our Minds, and the element, finding your element in life, finding what you're good at, challenging your talent, and that is so important today. And we must embark upon this revolution. We mustn't be frightened of it, yeah? And a lot of academics are frightened of it because they're out of their comfort zone, yeah? But the new generations coming in won't be. And it is a challenge, yeah? And the change is phenomenal. And we have to face the world as it is. It's not going to go away. But we have to harness it and engage it for the greater good. And I think we can do that. So thank you for listening. If there's any questions, I'll take questions. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to take them. Anyone got a question? Anyone disagree? I'm quite controversial. No? Well, thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
Thank you.
good.
Thank you. I think you have to stay back just for a small moment.
Okay.
Please come.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Professor Foskett. That was absolutely awesome. We all enjoyed your TED Talk kind speech. So thanks very much on behalf of the Bengal Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you.
Thanks for being with us.
May I now request Mrs. Shangjukta Bosu to come up on the dais and hand over a memento on behalf of the Chamber to Professor David Foskett.
Hello, how are you?
Can we have a round of applause, please? Thank you so much. We are just starting off with our panel discussion. Please don't go away. it is starting right now. I would request my colleague Debaruti to come up on the dais.
Next, innovation-driven learning, preparing for a new world of student mobility and technology. The session will be chaired by Dr. Suranjan Das, Vice Chancellor, Jadavpur University, Mr. Ranjan Bandhopadhyay, Global HR Head for Strategic Initiative and BPO, Tata Consultancy Services Limited, Dr. Professor Rajan Saxena, Vice Chancellor, NMI-MS, Professor Shumon K. Mukherjee, Director General, the Bhawanipur Educational Society. Request you all to be seated because we are just starting with the session.
Good afternoon. It is my very great pleasure to invite my co-speakers in the panel, Mr. Ranjan Bandhopadhyay. Please. Professor Ranjan Saxena. Okay. Professor Shumon Mukherjee. Since we are running out of time, could we start the session right away? And as I see it, this session strikes the very chord of the present program. As I see it, this program can be seen in the context of what we now call Industry University Academia Partnership Program. It is very regrettable that the development of Industry University Partnership Program, and I see it in that particular light. And with this, could I request straight away Mr. Ranjan Bandhopadhyay, HR and Global Head, Tata Consultancy Services Limited, to kindly address the House. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just stick to the topic. I will be talking about mobility, physical mobility, digital mobility, and the convergence thereof. All right. If we see today, the number of students going to study outside their country is about 5 million. By 2025, the number is supposed to be about 25 million. About 15 years back, it was 1 million. And the second data point is, if we look at the graduates who are becoming postgraduates, the number from 23 has become 43% in the last 10 years. The reason I'm saying all this is these are statistics and these impact mobility. Mobility I thought I'll just, because people have been talking about a lot of things, I want to talk about a dream that I've had. The dream is that if you are in rural India and if you don't have toilets, you can't go and have education. It might sound very odd, but in South India, we have proven this because we created about 600 toilets, which increased the participation of students to about 70% from 18%. Second is that if we are looking at education in the cities, like for us in TCS, we have started about 4 courses. First time we started a program in analytics with ISI in Tezpur. Then we started a BCom program about 5 years back for making employability and ensuring students are right for the jobs. And last but not least, we are starting an engineering program called BTech in Computer Science and Business Systems this year. And Sister Nivedita is our first college from the eastern region that we are going for. So from TCS perspective, we have always been very, very categoric about employability. I have personally driven something called the Interview Ready app, which TCS offers free to the students. And with that, I think we don't have much time. Because we are between lunch and everybody else, so.
Okay, we can have an interactive session then. Yes.
We should have that.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Bandhopadhyay. The whole idea of a panel is to have interaction. So I would request the speakers to kindly limit themselves to 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes, so that we can take the questions from the floor. Could I now request Professor Saxena to kindly address the House? Would you like to sit in?
Well, I think I had already talked about it in the morning session. What is truly needed today in terms of innovations, if I were to look at it in terms of the innovations in program design or in assessments, and even in terms of the pedagogy, I think truly speaking, today there is a need for that kind of an innovation. And one of the kind of ways that we are looking for, that we believe, is that of breaking the silos, the silo way of learning. For a long time, the education has been a very structured model of education. And that has restricted the students' learning, and also from the point of view of the employability, the student is restricted to a very large extent to a particular sector or to a particular firm itself, or to a particular kind of a job for which the person may have been recruited. But the fact today is that the individual today changes at least 3 to 4 jobs in his entire lifetime itself. It could be even much more. And not only is that the person changes the job, which is very much unlike what we have seen in the past, where if a person took a job and then stayed on that particular job till the time the person retired. Today, the day where the person isn't really loyal to any kind of an organization, but it is really looking at it from the point of view of what next the person is able to do. So typically speaking, the individual, if the individual is going to be taking up multiple job roles in his kind of a lifetime, then the question that comes up is, what kind of a lifelong learning models do we really create which will help the student to adapt to the changes that are taking place? And from that kind of a perspective, that I believe that thinking in silos, learning in silos has to cease. We have to make the person think or develop a critical thinker. We have to develop the students as critical thinkers. And for that, the person has to be equipped with multiple kind of subjects during the period of his study itself. That's one part that I want to leave it over here at this point of time. The second part of it is, for a long time we have said that the degree is going to be awarded at the end of 3 years. So the period has been a very important factor when we are talking about the award of a degree or a diploma, etc. But we are not really testing the learning, we are not testing the outcomes. Now it could be that I'm able to learn at a much faster pace than somebody else who's not able to learn at that kind of a pace. So why should I continue to learn or continue in the program at the same pace as the other person is doing it? It's very frustrating. So from there, we need to look at it from the point of view of changing the entire assessment models, and also in terms of looking at whether the credentialing would be on the basis of the number of years that I'm spending or on the number of credits that I'm acquiring, and what kind of a outcome that I'm really presenting, whether I've really learned what I was expected to be learning. And so therefore, from an outcome-based learning, and if I'm able to prove that kind of an outcomes, I should be able to graduate in that kind of a program. The third part of it is that today, it isn't the monopoly of only one institution to give the degree. I should be able to take into consideration the credits that the student acquires from different sources. So from all this angle, one of the biggest challenge today in education system is that of a change, managing such a change. And for that, the first thing that is really needed is the mindset. The teacher mindset, the faculty mindset, and where the faculty has to accept that not everything is made here. Not everything that I teach is really going to be valid. Student can learn from everywhere. So I don't have that kind of a monopoly. People can learn from everywhere. So not made here only has to come in as a big kind of a mindset. And so therefore the teacher mindset and also the leader mindsets have to change. What I'm really trying to argue therefore is that the cultural changes are required today in the education system. And not only so, if that kind of a change occurs, truly speaking, then innovations can really begin. Which means let's try and disrupt the learning models that we have today in whichever way that we are able to do it. There are institutions which have already started doing it. There are government kind of suggestions that have come up. The UGC has been talking to the universities to take into consideration some of the SWAM courses, that is the online courses, as a part of their credit structures. So when that is going to be happening, there is no reason why we should not change the credentialing models itself. So these are some of the kind of thoughts that I have over here for you.
Thank you, Professor Saxena, for those thoughts. Could I now request Professor Shuman Mukherjee to kindly address the House?
I'll do some talking standing because I think better when I stand. We happen to be in a very interesting month of May. On the 2nd of May, we were celebrating the birthday of Satyajit Ray. And on the 9th, we'll be celebrating the birthday of Rabindranath. And between this Oscar winner and the Nobel laureate, I'm going to tell you a story. And the story is, both of them did not have much faith in degree-giving examinations. And that speaks volumes about what happened even 100 years ago about what the educational system innately has. Satyajit Ray did pick up a degree in science and economics, but immediately thereafter he moved over to Vishwa Bharati to vest his further interest in a holistic kind of approach to life. While I tell you this, I'm asking the three questions which should be raised today. We are talking about innovation. My first question is why? Why do we want to innovate? Because innovation is quite different from intervention. And when you're talking about innovation, you're trying to create new values, new theories. The second is, what for? Who is it directed to? And although we did mention that there is a socio-economic problem there, I think there's a problem of trade-off which we have not seen. If you look at education, it started as a process of esoteric enlightenment. Go back to centuries, the Vedas, it was enlightenment for the rich and for the certain castes of people. It moved on to creating of a gentleman, and then the mass education, which is production for the masses, balance wheel of society, as Horace Mann would say. We still bear that burden today because we talk about NCLB, no child should be left behind, but the trade-off is, where's the money to chase excellence and also cater to large? So when you're talking about innovation, we are not looking at the economics and the political theories that goes behind forming a course which is manageable, acceptable, accountable, and accessible. And if you're not doing that, then you're creating a divide within society of two kinds. One is for the villages, one is for the urban kinds, one for the affluent, one who can take courses with tuitions, one who cannot afford tuitions and therefore is anyway left behind. I often raise this question, I raise it again here. If an athlete can be stripped of his medal because he's under drug, then why do we applaud students who get the first position in the university on the coffers of his father with 6 tutors? Where's his credit? And the first point that I'd like to bring in here is education is not equal to knowledge. Education is creating something new. And that requires three things. One is cognitive thought. The second is socio-economic emotional balance, which somehow has been left behind, which is why we find Satyajit Ray and Rabindranath and all the great thinkers who actually dawn our worlds. Somehow in our educational system, we've left behind history, geography, English. We still go for STEM, science, technology, English, and mathematics, as if that is knowledge. And therefore, you have a society today which is so depraved of ethical values. There are no moral things left in it because we don't understand the importance of equating with one another, the importance of literature, the importance of sociology, the importance of knowing where we came from and what is your destiny. And if you're not going back to liberal education, you're not even considered educated. You may be considered literate. There are three stages of life: the child, the adult, and the parent. As far as we are concerned, the adult stage is one of arrested development, because whatever we did as a child. We learned, we felt. And one of the things that my friend Rajan was referring to repeatedly is, why do we force students in class? And I can tell you the best classroom for a child lies in the mother's heart, because there's love. So if you're going to dish out something interesting for the child, why should he be in this class? And you can't just monitor his education by saying be regular in class or else get out. Now, there's something called the love for knowledge, the zest for knowledge. Nobody visits library anymore. And the courses, although the chairman mentions that, is archaic and old. I'm raising two fundamental questions today. When your computer can do all the statistical work, and you are training your students to be equipped with innovation and technology, why do you teach statistics and mathematics the way it was taught 50 years ago? Why are you still using those books? Who sits in along a computer and actually calculates kurtosis and skewness and measures of central tendency? It's press of a button, you get your results. The candidate needs to know how to work on his computer. The courses needs to be overhauled totally. Let me take the example of economics. By caste, I'm an economist. And let me tell you, economics is a way of thinking. It can make you look on one side and change the axioms. You can have the same assumptions with the different set of assumptions, a totally different conclusion. It's a way of life. It's a way of thought. But there's nothing an economist can say with certainty it happens. Therefore, the economists differ. And here we have books which force you to believe that the economy comes to equilibrium, when actually, there's no equilibrium in the world, there's chaos. So how do you handle uncertainty? How do you handle risk? Not taught at school levels. And you have management students doing that. You have, in fact, today in India, all courses of business management, I'm pretty close with that, other than IIMS and XLRI, where the last 4 years of whatever happened in India is not in your course. Tell me why? Because it's book driven. And the books are written and approved by a board, and that takes 2 years to reach your classroom, and 2 years for approval. So nobody in India, in so-called universities, know what happened under Modi regime. And you expect that guy to go and pick up a job. Are we educating our people? And this is a question we should be raising here. If a course is not rehashed every year, you're not even live to the situation, why are you dishing it out to your students? You need not know how equilibrium takes place. You need to know how pricing is done. You need to know why public users are brought in. You need to know why parks are being charged. You need to know why the water tax should be there. You should know what is cost-benefit analysis, and you should know what is the future. And all this, with prediction, comes with econometrics. Economics is taught at school and college, and the application takes place in the post-graduation. But I find, to my dismay, and all it needs is a bit of plagiarization. Look at what's happening in the West. Do they use micro and macroeconomics for business school students? They don't. They have books like Factors That Affect Firms and Society. And we don't want to take it. And that's why none of our B schools, including IIMs, rank in the first 200 B schools in the world. So it requires a bit of introspection. It requires a little of looking across to see what the world is doing and catching up with it. So when you have a computer-driven educational system, when you have e-learning, why are you not following that method? And finally, we have possibly highly capable people which are technically proficient, but we don't have credibility. There's a crisis of leadership. If you go back 50 years, you would have people who would like to decorate your walls with, because they are examples to follow. I remember my grandfather having the pictures of Rabindranath, Vivekananda, Vidyashagar, people he had actually met. Can you think of pictures you like to decorate your walls with in the present generation? And that shows the crisis that has taken place, and this is an outgrowth of your education, because there are no moral values. There's no multiculturalism. There's no understanding and empathy. You think letters, marks, and getting a good job is the purpose of education. I think we need to look at the whole thing again. And as someone said, if you ask a cobbler, what will happen to you? He doesn't worry about his job and existence. But tell an MBA there's no job for you, and you'll know where the crisis of education is. He spent such a lot of money, but he doesn't know how to fend for itself. He says, pick me up because I've learned so much. And that's why we've lost it, because he can't create his own business plan and do it. So it's a very simple exercise. It's soul searching and finding out why research is lacking behind, why new ideas are not coming forth, why can't we put our thought process together, why can't we be childlike in our own development, feel, touch, behave, interact, and feel that we are one together. And that is why holistic education is the only way for survival, not only in India, for the world at large.
Thank you very much, Professor Mukherjee. Thank you very much, Professor Saxena. Thank you very much, Mr. Ranjan Bandyopadhyay. We would have liked to have an extended session, but we are short of time. Of course, we are all waiting for the lunch. But I think we have got enough food for thought. And as we round up, could I once again thank the Sister Nivedita University and the Bengal National Chamber of Commerce for creating this wonderful platform of interaction between industry and the universities. An entry point has been created, and a request Professor Satyam Raichaudhuri to ensure that it doesn't end here, it should go on. And as I conclude, the three important points that have come up is how to relate innovations with new patterns of education, new patterns of teaching learning process. The point that has been again and again been stressed, that this relationship need not be confined only to prepare our students to gain good jobs. Time has come to really ponder whether, as Professor Mukherjee pointed out, whether the goal of education should only be to create students who can contribute for producing greater and greater national wealth, or the goal of education should be to create what Martha Nussbaum said, inclusive citizens, citizens who could ponder, who could question, who would be creative. We should remember that the universities should be the places where dissent can be fostered, where people should be allowed to think outside their own campus. If you go to Oxford or Cambridge or to any other good university abroad, the hallmark of an excellence of an university is to equip the students not only to remain confined in laboratories or school or classrooms, but to think what is happening outside the campus. Fortunately, I come from a university where students think too much of what is happening outside the campus. And I'm proud of the students. But the only thing I advise my students is to ensure that when they ask for the democratic rights, kindly do not infringe upon the democratic rights of the others. And I think that should be one of the points of innovation as we think of education. The second point that I would like to stress is that when we think of innovations, we should ensure that the innovations that we make should be dependent on the ground reality. What is applicable in the advanced countries of West need not be applicable to a developing country like India. Even within India, what is applicable for JNU, Delhi, or centrally funded institutions cannot be made applicable to state universities which are derived of funds. So we need to be very, very careful about it. We need also to be careful when we try to make innovations exclusively dependent on computer or online technology. A recent study has shown that only 28% of the total population in the country have access to internet. So if we completely make ourselves dependent in terms of innovation in education on computer technology, are we not creating a new digital divide in our society? We need to be very, very careful of that. The final point that I would like to make, very often we find a general trend in the thinking that innovations mean we need to completely break away with the past. I do not believe in that dictum, because new philosophers around the world are now talking about traditional modernity, a process where we bring together modernity and tradition so that we can create a better place to live in. And as I conclude, let us hope when we go in for innovation, let it not be exclusively dependent on technology. When we go for innovations, let it not be exclusively dependent on completely breaking with the past. When we speak of innovation, let us ensure that we create citizens and students who who not only think of themselves, but who can also think of the society, who can also think of the country, who can also think of the people who have been deprived of education in this country. Only then innovations can lead to a teaching learning process which can create good citizens. And if we have good citizens, we can have good India. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much. I think we owe a big round of applause to this panel who has brought about the importance of ethos and morals in education. We have a very pleasant task to perform. For that, may I please request Mr. Shottam Roy Chaudhuri, Vice Chairman, the Education Committee, Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Sir, can you please come up on dais to present mementos to our esteemed speakers? May I request Mr. Shottam Roy Chaudhuri to present a memento to Dr. Suranjan Das, Vice Chancellor, Jadavpur University. To Mr. Ranjan Bandhopadhyay, Global Head HR for Strategic Initiative and BPO, TCS. To Professor Shuman K. Mukherjee, Director General, the Bhawanipur Educational Society. May I please request Dr. Shubarno Bose to please come up on dais.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, here for an outstanding session. And to all our attendees, we are breaking off for lunch at last. And we are starting dot at 3, where the very interesting session by the head of the IBM Watson, Kingshuk Banerjee from Bangalore, and Anandu Dash from Bangalore. So they are starting off right at 3 p.m. So we are reassembling here at 3 p.m. sharp. Thank you. Enjoy your lunch.
See you.